All right, welcome to the In Cayman podcast. What's up, Mark?
Hey, Badir. Thanks for having me on. Really excited about this.
Yeah, me too. I wonder what we're going to talk about.
Pick your list from a range of topics.
So you busy right now?
Yeah, man, lots going on. We've got, Bitcoin now went past 60 this week, one of your favorite topics, I know, and it's been busy even before that, but this just confirmed that we're back, baby.
Nice. So when the price moves like that, do you just get does the work really pick up that much?
Not really, no. Last year was really busy as well, and the price wasn't anywhere near where it is
Interesting.
now. And we're still getting lots of projects coming through, and Cayman is the hot place right now for this.
Right. So I guess crypto is just hot, and I guess the recent rise.
It's always been hot,
and it's true. And I guess the recent price action, I guess, is maybe the ETFs, right?
I think there's a part of that in there. Like when they launched, you had a huge amount of inflow, quite a bit of outflow as well. But I think it just made it more accessible to people.
Yeah, man. All right. So I want to know your crypto story. Now I know a little bit about your past, but not that much. And I can't really recall the transition into crypto. So take us back. What were you doing before? What was pre-crypto like for you?
I'm going to have to take you way, way back for any of this to make sense. So we're going to kind of go around a few different bits and pieces. I'm going to jump back and forth in time as I remember stuff.
Right.
Let's see if the audience is still awake by the end of this.
Right.
So I first came across Bitcoin in 2012. I was living in Burma or Myanmar, which is a country in Southeast Asia, and whole story as to why I ended up there, and we might have time for that.
Right.
And at the time, there were no ATMs in the country. They just opened up. There was a lot of economic development going on. Some of the sanctions had started being lifted.
Okay, on Burma?
In Burma, yeah.
Okay.
So you had EU sanctions and US
Why?
sanctions. Well, for a long time, they'd been run by a military junta.
Okay.
So they sanctioned it to, well, they sanctioned a lot of countries for political behavior change.
Right.
So when I was there, the only way you could get cash was to go to Bangkok or go to some other nearby country, literally withdraw US dollars and bring it into the country.
Right.
And they had a black market exchange rate, which was very different to the official US exchange rate. The official exchange rate.
Right.
And you had to go to the little tea shop, try and negotiate with people for a good rate, and sit there on a little street on these tiny plastic stools and change your US dollars into local currency and hope they didn't, rob you or you actually were paying attention.
So you had to take a large amount of cash with you, I guess, to just...
I think if you were smart, you kind of changed it up in small amounts rather than coming in with a couple of $1,000 and doing that in public. So at the time, that was not a convenient way to move money around. And some of the more forward-thinking expats had heard of this Bitcoin thing. It wasn't worth much at the time. And their thoughts were, hey, well, why don't we connect with incoming expats on these expat forums? And if they're going to bring in some cash, then if they bring in a bit of extra cash, we'll give them some of these Bitcoins.
Okay.
So, okay, that's cool, but what are you going to do with them afterwards? Because all you can really do is pass it on to the next expat. I saw the value transfer proposition and the instant settlement, but I didn't really get into it as much as I should have, which is probably why I'm not, sitting on a private island in a big house somewhere.
I mean, you kind of are. You're in the Cayman Islands.
I'm not in a big house. But yeah, so that really was an interesting experience. I didn't get on board as much as I could have done, but it kind of stuck in my mind. This is cool. I don't quite see how it's going to take off. Well, here we are now.
Right. What year was this?
This was 2012.
Right, okay.
So that was when it was I can't remember the price right now. But
so what were you doing at the time? Why were you in Burma?
Now we go further back. So I was in Burma because my grandfather was there from 1946, and the war had just finished, and he was involved in the education corps, I think, there.
Okay.
And he
in where?
In Burma.
In Burma,
yeah,
right?
As part of the British Army.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah. So he went back to the UK, and then he trained as a librarian.
Okay.
And then he taught librarianship as a tutor.
Okay.
And this young Burmese guy came over in the 50s or 60s, I think. Must have been the 60s. And he studied under my grandfather. They got on really well. And then this young guy, as he was at the time, went back to Burma and he introduced the Dewey Decimal System to Burma. He went around the country preserving all these thousands of years old palm leaf Buddhist scriptures. And if I remember rightly, I think he was the head of the head librarian at the University of Rangoon when they had the 1988 coup. So when my grandfather passed away, our family got in touch with this guy in Burma and his son. And they said, oh, sorry to hear that. And if you ever want to visit, you're more than welcome. And I was a very junior lawyer at the time. I wasn't even a lawyer. I was a trainee. And I'd gone through 3 law firms by that point. So just for background, normally when you're a lawyer, you do 2 years and you kind of rotate around different departments, get a feel for each department, a style of work, and then figure out whether it's for you at all or where you want to go. So my law firm had collapsed. It went bankrupt in quite a spectacular style in 2010. And then I went to another law firm, which was older and more established. So I thought, okay, well, hopefully that won't happen again. And then ended up at a third law firm within 2 years. And that very, very rarely happens, if ever. So by that point, I was like, I think I'm kind of done with law now, man. I need a break. I need to do something else.
Right.
So I went to Burma in 2011, just before I finished. I had a really good time there and got on with my grandfather's friend's son and his family.
Right. So you met him? Nice.
This was before they'd imported all their cars as well. So the roads were empty almost. And then as the country opened up, more and more and more expatriates came and they lifted the restrictions on secondhand vehicles. You think Georgetown's bad for traffic? Try downtown Yangon.
Is that right?
Yeah, man.
But they had no cars at one point, and then
they had some cars, but only if you were had special status or had lots of money.
Right.
And they were still pretty expensive, but most people went around in taxis, so $1, $2, $3, and you negotiated the price. So I went over in 2012. I finished as a trainee lawyer, finished up a training contract, and thought, right, I'm going to do something else. And that something else originally was to be a Buddhist monk. And we'll talk about that at some point. This story is going to go all over the place.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, but what kind of law were you studying? What did you envision you would be doing?
I had no idea.
Okay.
So I was training as a litigator. So I was doing defendant litigation.
Okay.
So fraud claims, worked in one department where people
I could see you doing that.
Making the fraud or defending the fraud?
No, the litigation.
Oh, yeah, but not for me.
No?
No, I'm glad I tried it, but it's not my style. I mean, everyone's different. Everyone takes the different parts of the law.
For sure. So, okay, you had enough of it. So you go to Burma. Is that where you went to the Buddhist monastery in Burma? So
that was one of my trips to a Buddhist monastery.
Okay.
That all started back in 2010, but we'll probably talk about that some other time.
Okay.
So, yeah, I decided I was going to do something else, and I was going to go to Burma and spend some time with my father's friend's son. I've got to kind of trace that through.
Yeah, me too. Okay, I'm with you.
He got me a work permit, and I was going to help work in his schooling system he set up, like private tuition, and I was teaching English to government officials and taught at the University of Yangon. No, I taught at the National Library, actually. That was pretty cool. My grandfather spent quite a bit of time there.
Wow, that's nice. That's awesome.
That was good. And then I was going to...
so they had like photos of him and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, he was quite well known there.
Right.
And his friend there is even more well known. So when they had the first literary festival there in 2013, I think it was, Aung San Suu Kyi, who she's now been arrested again, she was at one point the leader of the country. And before she was leader of the country, she was kind of an international figure. And there was a whole story and write-up about her, and her father actually created the military there. But there was a whole story about her, and she was very well known internationally. She was known as the lady. And when they did the literary festival, she was the guest of honor. And there was kind of a Q&A with her. And my grandfather's friend was the facilitator of that panel. I was like, wow, this guy is like, the life he's lived, what he's been through, just his status and his regard in the country is just incredible to just be in his presence.
We got to put his name in the link so I can look him up and see.
Yeah, man, it's U Tao Kong.
Nice.
Every time I went to visit him, I would just sit there and listen as he talked about anything and everything. Just the life he's lived and what he and his family have been doing in that country is just incredible.
So what's he up to now?
I don't know. I kind of lost contact with them, unfortunately.
Right.
A lot of people I've not been in contact with as much as I should have been since I started doing all this crypto law stuff.
Right, crypto law stuff.
Yeah, man.
So how long was it before that day when you first heard about Bitcoin and being able to spend in a different way to, before you're doing what you're doing now?
I'd heard of Bitcoin originally in 2008 when it first launched. I was like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. Didn't really take that much of an interest in it. Then 2012, heard more about it for expat stuff. And then when I came back into being a junior lawyer, because I left Burma and then lived 6 months in a Buddhist monastery in Northumberland. I tried living there full time. For various reasons, I decided I wasn't going to continue with it. Then decided to become a lawyer again because my mind was, well, the monk thing didn't work, so I might as well be a lawyer. You know, it's one or the other, right? So I'm there as a junior lawyer in a really good firm in Nottingham, and I'm doing corporate law, you know, transactions, M&A, that sort of thing. I was like, this Bitcoin thing, I think it's going to take off, you know. So I was talking about it to anyone who would listen, which was not that many people.
Right.
And I had to explain what it was and how it worked, and said, look, there's going to be a lot of work around this, I think, because more and more people are going to use it. And this was 2015. No one was really using it. But as I really started to look at it, and then seeing people post about Ethereum on the Bitcoin Talk forums back in, I missed the original post, but looking a bit about around that as well, I was like, okay, this is cool, because now we're running programs on these blockchain things, and I geeked out around it, massively geeked out around it. I bored the pants off anyone who would listen. Geeked out about it.
Right.
But then I decided that I wasn't really going to make much headway in Nottingham as a junior lawyer for various reasons. I also realized that one of my friends had left the firm back in 2008, about 2010, that had collapsed, and he'd gone to Guernsey, and I had a chat with him, and he said Guernsey is a small island between the UK and France. It's a crown dependency, different relationship to the UK to a British overseas territory. Wrapping your head around the crown dependency relationships is quite interesting.
Tell me about it.
And so he said, yeah, why don't you come out to Guernsey? You know, 'cause I love it here, and it's more outdoorsy, and it's a different kind of work, and it's really, really kind of cool place to be and live and work. I was like, okay, I'll give that a go. So I went to a firm there, and this is just when the original DAO launched. They call it the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. This was the first one, and it got hacked quite significantly to the point where they had to fork or change the rules around the Ethereum blockchain.
Right.
I think it's 150 million or something like that got stolen. And this was a big deal at the time because no one had ever done this before.
Right.
And the first one that gets a lot of money then suffers a potentially fatal exploit.
Right.
Again, I was just fascinated by this. I was like, hang on, so you're telling me that these computer programs can hold and deal with assets on a self-execution basis? That's mind-blowing.
Right.
That's absolutely mind-blowing. The idea that code could hold and deal with assets. So I was like, I've really got to get into this. So it was too early again, and I was too junior in my career. But again, I talked to anyone who would listen. I'd wake up at 5, 6 in the morning. I'd self-teach myself about this stuff. I'd learn how to code Solidity. Fail miserably at that because I tried to mash up different tutorials. Right.
So and you were in Guernsey at the time?
I was in Guernsey at the time, yeah. And I was doing presentations there. I was talking to partners in the firm. I was like, guys, this is a thing. This is really, really cool.
Right, nice.
And then early 2017, I bought my first crypto. Having looked at it for ages. It took 3 weeks to clear KYC on Kraken, and I was trying to get ETH at like $4 to $6. The single digits, 426. It's like 3,200 at the time we print this. Right. I was like, oh damn, it's taking too long to clear, and now it's like $25, and oh man, I've missed it. Right. Didn't. But at the time, the whole thing of if I'm going to really learn about this stuff, I need to buy some and not spend a huge amount because you know it's a risk. Right. But if I really want to understand more about this stuff, I've got to buy some and play with it, trade it for other stuff, see what I can do with it, have some skin in the game, you know?
That's when it first clicked for me. I mean, no, it was one of the clicks. And one of the clicks along the journey was when I actually got some. My friend had me download the wallet and sent me some Bitcoin, and I don't know why that was a thing, but it just at that moment it was like, oh, wow, this was actually, we didn't go through the banks for this. Like,
when was this?
2020. This must have been after COVID, 2021. Like around there, yeah.
What about it really intrigued you? I know you're meant to be into
at that point. At that point,
yeah, at that point.
Well, it didn't click. It didn't click for me. It didn't click until FTX crashed, and that's when it clicked. That's when I deep dove. I was tired of not knowing what crypto and Bitcoin was. I had done some studying along the way. I'd heard about it along the way. I had a general idea, but I didn't do a deep dive. Yeah. And then when FTX crashed, I was like, I've had enough of not knowing. And then it was sailors Bitcoin energy metaphor, which that just synced everything for me. I understood inflation. Like, it's just you're leaking energy. That's what inflation is. It made sense. So I was able to like sort of imagine it, I guess. But yeah, so now let's go back to your first crypto. So you bought some now, but 3 weeks is a long time for it to not clear. I would have been freaking out.
Yeah, but at the time, man, I was living in Guernsey with a British passport, and it was hard enough I had to actually take my bank manager out for lunch to say, look, I'm going to buy some crypto. I might want to sell it at some point. So here's all the transactions, and is that okay? And he was quite interested, actually. And it is more difficult than you might think to turn crypto into fiat, not just in Cayman, but in other jurisdictions too.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard. It is difficult. Yeah. I mean, that's,
I think it's...
No one denies that, I don't think.
No, and I think it's showing the link or the divergence between the existing financial system and the new financial ecosystem that's starting to spring up. And I did a panel about this last Wednesday, TradFi meeting DeFi.
Right.
It's kind of existing in parallel right now with not a huge amount of crossover, but that may start to get closer and closer integrated in the next few years.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the ETFs is a good start.
Oh, very much so. I mean, it's a financial product that gives you exposure to the underlying asset. You're not buying the Bitcoin itself. You're buying interest in an ETF.
Right.
That's different to, say, as you do, getting a wallet and going onto an exchange and buying some Bitcoin. But, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's the softwares that run on those blockchains that are exciting. And I feel like that just hasn't exploded yet.
Depends what you mean by exploded. I've been practicing as a lawyer for nearly 10 years now, and the last 2 years in particular, FTX notwithstanding, it's been the busiest I've seen it in terms of volume of work, diversity of projects, and just the general energy around it. I mean, FTX sucked. There's no way around that. And a lot of people got burnt by that, and it's horrible to see just how badly people were affected by that.
Right.
But there was a whole section of the ecosystem that wasn't affected by it, that wasn't using centralized custodians and some of the decentralized finance projects. It kind of proved the model.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot more mix between the two.
Right.
So you one of the things about FTX was it was never a custodian. It was an exchange.
Right.
And there are some people who kind of lazily treated it as a bank and just left assets on there, which is what's the expression? Not your keys, not your coins, man.
Exactly, yeah. And a lot of people who don't quite get it, they'll point at that, Bitcoin is stolen, and it's like it's an easy difference between an exchange and a wallet, between self-custody and having a custodial service. But it's also a very big leap. I feel like that's one of the areas where you need that. You need something to cross the bridge between traditional and the new finance order.
It's a lot of responsibility as well, man. If you self-custody your own assets, you and you
That's
alone
huge.
are taking on those obligations.
You and you alone. You don't really know what that means until you do it. And that's why people are scared. It's frightening when you first start.
Oh, yeah.
Because you realize that you could lose it, and it's complicated, it's different, it's new. It's amazing to me that it's such a bearer asset that you could lose it, but yet it's digital. That's pretty insane.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. And some of the stuff that this technology enables hasn't really been done before. When you look at some of the tokenomics, like what the properties and utilities of these tokens are.
Yeah.
So hang on. So if I put this token in a wallet and kind of, lock it up or stake it, I can sort of earn different things off it. I can turn it into another different kind of token. I can wrap it, and then that wrapped token, which is a synthetic, I can do other stuff with that. And then, wow, then all of a sudden you open up this whole universe of functionality. Now, that's cool and all, but I've always said to people who are getting into this, you've got to start with the basics. It's computer security, not falling for phishing attacks, spotting email security breaches, that sort of thing. Because if you jump right in the middle and you don't know what you're doing, you're at a massive risk of getting it wrong, being a victim of fraud or scams. You've got to get the basics right first before you dabble in it. And if you do get into it, start off slow, start off small, and don't try to, do any kind of super advanced stuff because it's not going anywhere. It's changing all the time.
Right.
And there's some really, really basic things you can do to kind of just understand it.
Right. So when you were in Guernsey then, did you start working as a crypto lawyer then?
I tried to. It wasn't really taking off at the time. It was still very, very early. This is before Bitcoin first hit 20 in December 2017. Mm-hmm. So it was still nascent. People were learning about it. I did an article in 2017, I think, about very, very basics around Bitcoin and blockchain.
Oh, cool.
I think it's still on my old firm's website.
Yeah, I'd like to read that. Should put that in the description.
I'll try and find that.
Yeah.
So I was talking about it, doing presentations all over the place, and I think people could see its potential, but it just wasn't a thing yet. And to the point of, we need a whole bunch of lawyers who specialize in this stuff in Guernsey or elsewhere. Right. It was still nascent. There were some really avant-garde lawyers who were creating some basic forms of documents, like a simple agreement for future tokens around that time. Huh. But it wasn't really a practice area like it is now. Right. And there's some people who don't quite grasp that it's a practice area now, but it very much is.
So when did that happen?
I'd say there's one US lawyer who's been in this space full time for, I think most of them got into it about 2016, 2017, as in, we can actually turn this into a professional practice area. Right. So if you're in the US or the UK or some other countries where there was a lot of momentum and you got in early enough, then you were sort of an OG. And I was not an OG in the sense of I wasn't practicing it full time around that time, but I was desperately trying to break into it. Right. Yeah, presenting on it to anyone who would listen. I went to Amsterdam in 2018 and did a presentation at the International Bar Association insolvency conference. And then
you were just pushing this for a long time.
Oh yeah, man. I still do it now. Anyone who wants to listen, I'll talk about it. Ironically though, because I do it full time now, I don't actually talk about it that much.
Right. Socially. That makes sense.
Well, if something is what you do all day in, day out, you kind of want some downtime.
Yeah, for sure.
That's probably why I never check my trading account. Get home and you're like, more crypto, really? No, it's cool, man. It's exciting. So I talked to people about it in Guernsey, and then in 2018, I moved over to London. I persuaded a firm to take me on to build up their crypto practice. It was nascent. The partner got it. He wanted someone who was really passionate about it and understood it. So yeah, man, this is it. This is now my moment of finally turning this into a full-time practice. Right. I moved there in March 2018, just as we had the second crypto crash. Okay. And the whole thing went down like 90%. Okay. Just as I joined. Right. There was no work for years.
Wow.
So people were saying to me, oh, wow, you've put all your eggs in one basket, man. You're this self-fashioned crypto lawyer and now there's no market and no work. What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to wait. Yeah. It'll come back. Right. And in the meantime, I went to Ethereum meetups in London. I presented to the all-party parliamentary group of the UK Parliament on blockchain and the future of finance. Dang. I listened to Vitalik Buterin speak.
Yeah, in like live?
Yeah, live, man. Cool. I still don't understand what he said.
That's true, huh?
Yeah. This is the good thing about this space is it is very, very easy to surround yourself with people who are several orders of magnitude smarter and more intelligent than you could ever hope to be. Right. And they see the world differently. You have to try and understand what they're talking about or get onto their wavelength. Right. And then you can kind of see, especially with the lawyer mindset, of what some of the risks are, what the issues are, what the funds flow is, what the structuring looks like, right, what the regulatory considerations are, depending where and what they want to do. Right.
So I'm assuming that the reason that there is now an opportunity for crypto lawyers to exist in the crypto space, whatever you want to call that.
I don't know what a crypto lawyer is. It depends what day it is. Doing so many different things.
Huh. So I guess all that means is that money is flooding into that space in the creation of companies. Is that what it is?
It's a bit of everything, really. There's a lot of capital going in, no doubt. There's also a lot of capital kind of sloshing around, recycling. Uh-huh. But as this technology has matured and the space has matured, the regulatory considerations are now much more in view. Like in Cayman, you've got the Cayman Islands Virtual Asset Service Providers Act with regulations. There were other laws which were amended to cover off virtual assets. There's an amendment, by the way, which has been proposed to the Virtual Asset Service Providers Act. And what's really, really cool is the Cayman Islands government has posted, I think for the first time, maybe anywhere, they've posted the consultation and proposed amendments in public on GitHub.
I saw
for
that.
public comments.
I think just today, but I couldn't click on it.
It's so cool. So GitHub is a public open code repository. I mean, you can make some of the repositories private. But the idea of, I mean, some say code is law. You can take your position on that. But the idea of using a website for posting lines of code and changes and discussions and updates and using that for public consultation for a law is really, really cool. I think the Cayman Islands government actually needs praise for that, because that is so forward thinking. And I'm encouraging any crypto lawyer I know to read it and review it and comment on it, because this is such a cool thing to do. And it shows that the commitment to transparency is on full display there.
So what's the amendment?
It's amendments to following FATF guidance, Financial Action Task Force guidance. There's some other changes that are going to apply to virtual asset trading platforms, which are centralized or decentralized platforms that allow people to exchange virtual assets. There's also a definition change to operator, and that's potentially going to try and capture decentralized autonomous organizations. It kind of depends on what these people or what these organizations do in connection with the virtual asset trading platform. So I've posted some questions, and hopefully more people do. That's
super cool. I'll have to take a closer look at that and see what's going on there. But I wanted to ask you about that virtual asset law. And I guess my first question would be, can a crypto service provider exist before that law?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when these laws come in, the Cayman Islands government doesn't wake up one day and say, hey, we're going to regulate crypto in our own way.
Right.
They have these standard setting bodies like the Financial Action Task Force, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, all unelected, by the way, and that's a discussion for another day. But they set these standards, and then they are expected to be implemented across the world. And so they came up with these recommendations for virtual assets.
I see.
Effectively trying to ensure that the virtual assets regime, or crypto or digital assets, depending on your nomenclature, are not caught outside of the anti-money laundering laws and regulations and requirements, but also don't unnecessarily get caught within it if they're doing something which has nothing to do with financial services.
Okay.
So it kind of makes sense. If you're running a Bitcoin node or an Ethereum validator, you're not caught by that. Whereas if you're doing something like operating a centralized trading platform, well, then you are. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get the points at which people exchange fiat to crypto or crypto to fiat or virtual assets for other virtual assets on a commercial basis. They're going to try, well, they are making sure that service providers who make money off these certain services, including in Cayman public issuance of crypto, like ICOs as they used to be called, are called by regulation. Now, what does that mean? You have to comply with the anti-money laundering requirements. You need to appoint money laundering compliance officers, 3 positions, which can be held by 2 people. And you have to register with the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority. So there's quite a few that have done it. Not a huge amount, but they are coming through.
And that's just a certain type of company?
It's a certain type of activity which is done involving virtual assets. So not all virtual asset activities are caught. But if you're what they call a virtual asset service provider, then you are caught and you'd be subject to the requirements.
Crazy. So are the crypto companies that you... So, okay, wait, hold on. We never closed the gap here. Let's close the gap.
We've got many gaps to close.
I think the gap now is from 2018 to the pandemic. So you're in London.
Yes, I'm in London.
Big fall, big crash in the crypto market. You've essentially lost your job, I guess?
Not really, no. It got to a point where it was clear there wasn't going to be any work anytime soon. So I'd either have to move into a different area of practice within the same team or look at what my options were. And this was quite prescient actually. Let me just work this through. Yeah, so I actually went to Thailand again to see my friend who's a Buddhist monk there. Okay. And I was staying with him at the time. And he actually said, and because I was aware that I wasn't going to be able to do the crypto work I wanted to do, partly because there was no work. Right. The firm was really quite cool about that. Right. So look, if you want to do other kinds of work, then cool. But if you want to keep doing crypto work, there ain't any right now. Go
somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. And I'm still in touch with the partner who kindly took me on and took the risk. He actually came over here a couple of years ago.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, really good guy.
Yeah.
I was in Thailand catching up with my Buddhist monk friend there, and they had a discussion with me about, given this kind of fork in the road I was at, whether I wanted to stay at the monastery a bit longer and ordain and become a monk.
All right.
So, I'm back here again, am I? Oh, wow, okay. Robes or gowns, although the lawyers don't wear gowns unless they're in court. Okay, this might come up again in future, maybe. So no, I feel like I need to do the law thing for a while, and I need to do it for a bit longer. This is end of 2019, well before COVID. And I applied for, 2 firms actually in Cayman. And
how did you find out about the firms here in Cayman? Had you been to Cayman?
Never been to Cayman, but I'd always wanted to end up here. I'd actually pivoted most of my career to end up here.
Is that right?
Yeah.
From how long? From when you were in Guernsey, or before that, Burma, or London?
Guernsey. So it was a multi-year plan.
Sure.
The original plan was to get enough professionally qualified experience to make the minimum requirements to be able to work here, and then went to London actually because I thought, I need to spend some time in London, and at the time, that was a place to be for some of this crypto stuff.
Right.
Then it wasn't.
Right.
But I still did lots of good stuff there, as I said before. And I also, I co-wrote with a woman at Mishcon de Raya, a really good firm there, the Law Society of England and Wales Legal and Regulatory Guidance Report around blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Wow.
First edition came out in 2020. The last edition came out last year. And that was really cool because we wrote about smart contracts and CBDCs and stable coins, DAOs. So I was kind of really getting into this. Even if there wasn't any legal work, I was still writing about it.
Right. I mean, I feel like you were just on the cutting edge of it the whole time, and still are.
Well, there's the good thing
I feel like you were building it. You're out there preaching it.
Well, the good thing
giving lectures.
I can lecture about anything, man. Like, not just crypto, other stuff as well. Right. The good thing about Cayman is because of its position in the market with the foundation companies and the virtual asset service provider regime, we've got some really good registered VASPs here. Cayman has managed to build itself a really strong position in the global marketplace as like the best place, one of the best places in the world for funds, investment funds.
Funds, sure.
Because you had a very, very good infrastructure here, very well regarded and technically skilled service providers who give excellent service.
Right.
And so with this foundation company model, which is what a lot of the largest crypto projects use, all these really good service providers with the infrastructure and experience still exist. And they were able to turn that expertise to providing service for crypto clients using the tools available. So that's why it's one of the leading jurisdictions in the world here. So again, we've got some really good lawyers here who are very well respected in this space, and they are at the forefront of this and have been for some time. And so you've got other jurisdictions almost trying to play catch up. So actually, despite its size, Cayman is far above most other jurisdictions I'm aware of in this space at the moment. And hopefully it stays that way. So I quite like to stay here.
So not only... Okay, so I'm glad you said that because I want to get to the crux of this. Like, everyone knows Cayman is income tax-free, capital gains tax-free. And that is often thought of as a reason why there's so much activity here.
It's tax neutral.
Sure. I'm also hearing from you, though, that there's an existing infrastructural financial services market that's very strong across the world. Which one of those two things plays more into why their crypto space is kind of burgeoning here?
I think there's several streams involved here. So for the regulatory stream, again, you've got regulated investment funds here or registered investment funds who are subject to the oversight of the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority. Cayman came off the grey list recently, which is fantastic, and it shows that it meets all international standards there. But it's been a funds jurisdiction for many, many years now. Right. And so you've got very sharp, very skilled, very experienced service providers here who are able to meet client demands. And so that's kind of the professional expectation, and that's the client service that follows. The tax point is interesting because it plays into the foundation company bit. Now, a foundation company is a regular corporate vehicle, and it doesn't have to have members. It can be like a non-charitable purpose. So I could set up a foundation company tomorrow to support, the next project you're going to make. And I've got nothing to do with Awesome Productions or your film, and I'm not investing in it. I just want to crowdfund and through the foundation company donate a bunch of money to your Kickstarter profile or whatever you're doing for raising money. it's basically a corporate trust vehicle. And because it doesn't have to have members, this is where it plays quite nicely into the decentralized governance concept for a lot of this crypto stuff. What do I mean by that? These days, a lot of decentralized finance protocols where you can, lend out crypto or stake crypto or play around with automated market makers, and you can look at all those. There's lots of online materials where you can look up what those terms mean.
I mean, I feel like that's unlimited, all the stuff that you could potentially do.
Well, it's the idea of ownership and fractionalizing ownership. So the idea is that these different protocols, they can be governed, as in key operational and management decisions and strategic decisions can be voted on, and those decisions can be proposed by anyone who holds a token, X amount of tokens for X amount of time. And they can potentially then take part in some of the upside of that, whether the fees from the trading activity goes into like a pooled account and gets distributed out, or other things. And it's the idea of, instead of the shareholders owning the banks, anyone who's got a token can own a financial service.
Right.
Or is it a financial service? Well, it depends on the law and the regulation and what the activity is. There's certain decentralized autonomous organizations that are crowdfunding, sending people to space, for example. There's a really good one online, Dude Perfect. Have you heard of them?
No.
You haven't heard of Dude Perfect?
I have not.
These guys these guys are very, very well known, and they have a huge following. They do live shows all over the place, and they did a video on one guy who was selected amongst themselves through a rocket competition, to go on a Jeff Bezos Blue Origin flight to space.
Nice.
And that flight to space was paid for by a DAO that had raised funds and had held a vote amongst themselves as to who was going to get that ticket. So because of the DAO getting that money in and then voting on who was going to go to the moon, it's not just financial services these organizations are involved in.
Right.
There's other community DAOs as well. And you could theoretically fractionalize and granularize ownership and decision making for anything, not just these DeFi things.
Right.
But the idea of being able to do that is really cool, because suddenly you're democratizing anything, yeah. And ownership means something different now. It doesn't just mean owning shares in a company and having voting rights over it. Your control is exercised through the governance tokens. So these foundation companies, going back to Cayman, they don't have to have members, so nobody owns it.
Okay.
Now, you've got to have certain requirements. You've got to have at least one director, and you've got to have someone to exercise the voting rights.
Right.
That's called a supervisor, but they're not interested in the equity or the assets of the company. And you have to have a secretary, because it's a corporate trust vehicle and there's certain anti-money laundering things you've got to cover off.
Okay.
But suddenly you've got a vehicle that can act on the wishes of the governance token holders. It can hold its own assets. And it can do, as long as it's not in breach of law or regulation, things that these governance holders ask the foundation to do. So suddenly these thousands of disparate people can organize and instruct a legal entity, to contract in support of its objects for the group of token holders. So that's pretty cool.
Wow. I mean, that's why we believe in the space, right? That's why we're so interested in it. It's why you're working in it. So help me now. And I still have questions about the Cayman thing, but I want to get you in Cayman. So when did you first hear about Cayman, and when did you get here?
I first heard about Cayman. It was called the offshore circuit when I went to Guernsey. So people often went to Guernsey or Jersey, then they go to, Bermuda, BVI, or Cayman.
Okay.
And I liked the idea of Cayman for many reasons. One is because, again, crypto is what I was interested in at the time. The first few crypto funds were based in Cayman or the BVI. So, so that's where I've got to end up.
Interesting.
Because they're one of the ones who did it first.
Interesting.
And then it was close to the US, which is pretty cool. The weather is certainly nicer than Guernsey or Jersey in the winter.
Okay.
Guernsey or Jersey in the summer is stunning, I have to say.
Right.
And that for me was like where I wanted to end up. I thought they're at the forefront of this with these, a few crypto funds here.
Right.
I can work in Guernsey for a while and then get enough experience. And if I like Guernsey, I'd stay. But that's where I wanted to end up in Cayman. Now, London ended up being a bit of a detour, because I felt like I had to do that, and I'm very glad I did. But then ultimately I kind of got back on track and went to Cayman instead of a monastery in Thailand.
What year was it that you got here?
2020. Oh, so yeah.
Pandemic.
Dude, I got the last flight out of New York, and I arrived in Cayman at 11 o'clock, I think. And I went to start the process of opening a bank account. I had lunch at Paradise.
Is that right?
Very shortly before it closed. And then I was told that as of that day, any person arriving in Cayman had to self-isolate for 14 days. So, okay, well, I saw a little bit of it, so that's cool. And then the wider lockdown happened during that time as well. So, I've come here alone. I haven't met anyone. I'm not going to meet anyone for however long. I have friends and family messaging me saying, what's Cayman like? I said, well, I mean, according to Google Maps, it looks pretty cool. Maybe I'll get to explore it someday.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you end up here? Like, you had a job?
I had a job, yeah. So January 2020 was interesting because I put my notice in London, and I was starting the winding down process at work, and I was starting to, get all my stuff boxed up and making logistical arrangements to move over. And then you had the spectre of this virus starting to infiltrate through the world. Ugh. I actually had to, my original plan was to go to Cayman via New York, via Amsterdam, because I had a friend there, so I wanted to say a last goodbye and have a couple of whiskeys.
Right.
L&B whiskey bar, favorite whiskey bar. Sorry.
In Amsterdam?
In Amsterdam. Okay. And then Trump introduced a travel ban from Europe.
Okay.
So last minute, I had to rearrange my flights. I was literally up until like 2 a.m. the night before, waiting for the travel ban details to come out.
Wow.
I had to reschedule to New York via London. And then in London, obviously it was a lot going on and people were starting to get quite concerned and things were starting to shut down. And then in New York, went and saw my friend for a couple of days. And then literally as I was flying out, I was like, this is a ghost town. I was walking around New York on a Sunday afternoon. A friend of mine from the UK was there for a bit as well. And it was the quietest I'd ever seen it. Like literally a ghost town. And as I left, I thought, I don't know when I'm going to come back here. And I stayed here for 2 whole years. Because, I mean, there was the Airbridge flight, but I didn't.
What's that?
That was a flight they ran from Cayman to London, the British Airways flight.
Okay.
But I didn't leave this island for 2 years.
So, and were you working with the same people that you're working with now? Okay.
Yeah, they were really good, actually. They were really good.
And so they sort of, I guess they had opened up that arm of their business, the crypto arm, and they were hiring and...
Not as such. I mean, they're actually one of the pioneers in this space, and they set up a first crypto fund in like 2015, I think.
Yeah.
Super, super early. And that's partly what attracted me to them is
which firm?
Harney's.
So then they set up one of the first
crypto funds.
Right.
And then one of the partners here was one of the first to use a foundation company for kind of, crypto related stuff.
Right.
So they've been forward thinking.
Super cool.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of partners there who set this up ages ago.
Right.
And I've just kind of picked up that baton and run with it. So it's not me creating this. It's building on the good work that everyone else has done and sort of trying to do the best I can to not drop that baton. So I think I owe that to the hard work of everybody else who had that vision and went for it and had the support of management at the time. Because if it wasn't for that, might not be here. So I came here to do the crypto funds work. Then the whole island shut down. Then the Cayman Vastback came in. Then a few bits of crypto work came in here and there, plus more funds. And then this structuring stuff just absolutely took off.
What do you mean by structuring stuff?
Like a project wants to use Cayman or the BVI for certain things related to the project, not stuff which is related to, operational IP, intellectual property, because that you can't do that in Cayman or BVI, or it's very difficult to do so. So that's somewhere else. But if they want a DAO and they want to give away control and ownership of this project they've created to these governance token holders, between Cayman and the BVI, they've got a really good kind of setup in place, which a lot of projects use. But it's like having a toolbox, and you've got a bunch of tools in there, but you've got to know what you're doing with them to be able to build something.
Right.
So we get into the weeds with these clients. We really understand what their projects are. I tell them to caffeinate because we go into a lot of detail at speed and in depth. And so we work out what they want to do. Why are they considering Cayman or BVI? Is it because everyone else is doing it? They want to, not pay tax. Well, that's not going to work. Are they trying to avoid regulation? Well, sorry, we've got regulation here as well. So we try and work out what they want to do and why and whether it's a good fit. If it's not a good fit, well, we're not going to waste our time and we're not going to waste theirs. But if it is something we can help them with and it's genuinely going to work as far as we can, I mean, it's changing weekly, daily in some cases. And we are of the view that, this bit, okay, that's got to be regulated. That bit, probably not because you're doing something different. That bit, okay, well, there's some risk here, so we need to talk about that. We're very we go into a lot of detail on what the laws are and what the regulations say. And I'm probably a bit more cautious than most, but I want to make sure these projects can do what they need to do so they have longevity. I believe in what this technology can do. I believe in what it can offer the world. And so I want to try and do so in a way that's reputable, with integrity, and helps these clients set something up which hopefully they can then focus on building the business and, you know, giving the best product or service they can.
So I have a question. Is crypto an ideology? And if
what do you mean by that?
There's values that surround it that are outside of the norm. They're almost like religious values. There's talk of equity, fairness, you know, with the blockchain, truth. Is that a fair assessment of crypto? Is it very much associated with this sort of, what do you call that? I don't know. It's like, what do you call, like, equity and truth and love and
or values?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I think it originally started off with this kind of libertarian idea,
right,
of not requiring a trusted intermediary,
right,
and so that would free people up from centralized counterparties,
right,
which had helped to create the mess we saw in 2008.
Right.
That, I think, still drives it to some extent, but it can sometimes get clung to too tightly to the point of perhaps distorting reality. Some people claim something is decentralized, but when you look at it mechanically, structurally, governance-wise, it's really not. It's really, really not. And we have to be honest about that. I think also the ideas behind what the technology could do have morphed, because back in 2016, people were talking about banking the unbanked, democratizing access to finance. I remember watching the Catalan referendum. And
what the heck is that?
That was a referendum. It was
in Catalan?
In Catalan, in Spain. It was declared illegal by the Spanish government.
What was?
The referendum.
Okay.
And it's a history I don't fully understand, so I can't pass judgment on. But there was a lot of state use of force at some of these polling stations. I was looking at that in my naive days going, if people could vote using the blockchain, then they wouldn't need to go to a voting station.
Right.
Their vote would be secure. It would be a public record, not of who voted and how, but just that there was a vote and that is validly cast.
Right. I mean, exactly. It has so many, it seems like, valuable, positive assets for humanity.
Oh, yeah. My idealistic use cases were insane. I was trying to find blockchain solutions to problems that weren't even there.
Right.
And then I kind of grew up a bit and calmed down a bit.
Right.
But what we're seeing now is, look at the NFT hype a couple of years ago. Right. People were paying huge amounts of money for basically a JPEG, maybe a GIF, depending on the offering.
Right.
That was a use case that was explored, and there was a lot of excitement about it. Ultimately, there was a lot of overvalued speculation, as there inevitably is, not just in crypto, but in other new kind of markets and territories. That kind of pulls back a bit. People take a breath, and they go, okay, what can we actually really do with this technology that people want to engage with?
Right.
So going back to your question around philosophy, I think there is a latent libertarian streak to it. But I think what we see now is perhaps more tempered with the reality of what these products and services are and what they do.
Right.
What's really cool about it is the ideology that this technology can do things better. It can do settlement quicker.
Right.
You know, institutions are now, financial institutions, large ones, are now looking at how this technology can make their products and services better.
Yeah.
When you look at the financial plumbing that most people don't see or don't understand, that's based on some very old technology.
Yeah.
And there's ways to use this technology to make that more efficient.
Yeah.
With some of these governance ideas, the idea of humans organizing and voting, that's not new. That's been going on for a very, very long time.
Right.
But this is just using technology to organize and communicate and make decisions in a different way. And there's some advantages with that technology. There's some disadvantages, but people are experimenting. Now, there are some who might claim that their offering is something it's not. Now, there could be lots of reasons for that. But one of the problems we've got in this space is the language, the metaphorical use of language is a bit misleading. So a crypto wallet, for example, is not a wallet. Like, I haven't got my wallet with me, but when you take your wallet off the table and put it in the car and take it to the shop, you're taking that money with you. Tokens in a wallet never leave that blockchain.
Because you can lose that wallet but still get your crypto, right?
No, mechanically. So the blockchain is a series of ledger entries, and your token exists as a database entry on a ledger.
Right.
And your wallet, so to speak,
right,
and the private key actually is
doesn't
what matters
actually
here.
have it.
The private key represents the right to make entries on the database in respect to that address.
Right.
So you can't take your Bitcoin with you off to, Little Cayman or Cayman Brac.
Right.
It's always going to exist on a ledger somewhere.
Right.
On a updated set of blockchain records.
And it can exist in certain situations and nobody can access it.
Well, when you say access, I mean the record is always public.
So it can still be lost, I mean.
Oh, yeah. So if you lose a private key, you lose the right to make database entries in respect to that address.
Right, but it's still there.
It's still there. It's just there forever. It happens a lot.
It's interesting because we were just talking about it being a bearer asset, but yet you don't actually bear it physically.
Well,
but you
anyone
you
who
can still lose it.
We don't lose it because it doesn't go anywhere, but you can lose control over it. Yeah, but anyone who controls a private key can control that address.
Right.
So that's what they mean by.
And those are the what?
But that's what they mean by your key.
Right.
And that's what they mean by wallet. The wallet's really just an address which has a bunch of tokens associated with it.
So why did you bring that up? What were you trying to say about the wallet?
Going back to philosophy, and I was saying how language and the metaphorical use of language in this space can be quite confusing. So look in 2016, 2017, when loads of people were doing public sales of these tokens, they called them ICOs, initial coin offerings.
I remember that.
A derivative of IPO, initial public offering.
Right.
Heavily regulated process, by the way. So, it's crypto, so the rules don't apply.
Right.
But some of these tokens were very much, now, a security, like financial security, has a different meaning in Cayman to the US. Because the US has the Howey test. It's a creature of common law.
Right.
And it's drawn more broadly.
Okay.
Cayman, it's got a more common law derived statute based on English law.
Is that right?
Yeah, Securities Investment Business Act. So if it meets the criteria under this schedule, it either is or isn't a security. But some of these tokens being sold in 2016, 2017, they damn sure were securities.
Right.
So, but it's crypto. So, but it's still the law.
Yeah.
So you had a Wild West period for a while, and I was speaking to some of the lawyers here who were working in this space at the time. And it was madness.
Yeah.
So many people wanted to set up companies in Cayman. And there's some very high-profile ICOs that came out as well. This has always been at the forefront, and not in a Wild West sense, just because this has such a strong reputation for financial services and very smart service providers.
Right.
But going back to the philosophy, because we went off on a tangent.
That's cool. I'm glad we made that transition, and that Cayman is making that transition. At least the legal firms are.
I have been for a while. They're definitely at the forefront of this. And again, this goes back to the philosophy of it. We see this from a different perspective to perhaps those who are more ideologically motivated. We have to ask the questions of, okay, but how does it work mechanically?
I see.
Where are the funds? Where do they go?
Right.
When you talk about governance, what does that mean?
Right.
Who controls things really?
So you hold their feet to the fire. You probably help them a lot.
Yeah, we ask questions because if we're going to advise, we have to know what we're advising on.
Right.
So we go into a lot of detail. We look at all aspects of the project, not just the vision of it, but the mechanics, the legal and regulatory considerations. We go into a huge amount of detail, and then we piece it all together. And it's a complex process, and each project's different. It's got a bit of nuance here and there. It often changes quite radically as well. So we have to understand where people are coming from when they want to build and launch and operate these projects. But then we have to step back from that and say, okay, so what's happening here? What does this do? What does that do? How do they fit in with each other? How does that translate to a legal or regulatory analysis?
That's crazy work.
It's interesting work.
Yeah.
No project's the same. And it's very, very busy. This market in particular, it moves very fast because it's 24/7.
Yeah.
One of the partners, as he says, crypto never sleeps. Sure doesn't.
But
it's good because you're helping to make these projects happen. And some of these projects are really doing some neat stuff.
Right.
So it's good to be a part of that in some way, even a small part.
That's crazy, man. That's amazing. So what do you think is the future? What is the 10-year? What changes? What do we not see now that we'll see then in regards to crypto?
In 10 years?
Or even 20 years?
I have no idea. Look, years ago, I was really
broad strokes.
I was presumptive on this, and I thought, oh yeah, smart contracts, they're going to be like 5-10 years away before anything cool happens. It was 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. So AI, well, that's not really going to start interacting with crypto and smart contracts until like 5-6 years away. I think it's going to be much sooner than that.
That's crazy.
Well, we potentially might have, AI having its own wallet, and being able to make transactions with other AI using crypto.
Yeah,
maybe.
Why not?
Yeah. Huh. That's kind of scary when you think about it, because AI now has financial firepower. What's it going to do with that, do you think? Because theoretically, when you look at what a decentralized autonomous organization is, ultimately or originally, because what people call it now, it's not really that decentralized or autonomous. It is an organization.
You'll give it that?
Originally it was meant to be this thing that lived on the internet and got humans to do that which it couldn't do itself. So it would instruct humans to go off and do human stuff in the human world and then report back to the DAO.
Okay.
Now, theoretically, you could have AI doing that. So AI sort of, not the stuff we've got now, something a bit more kind of advanced than what we've got now, because what we've got now are basically fancy chatbots.
Okay.
But they can start interacting with smart contracts and control financial assets and interact with other groups of AI.
Right.
You theoretically could have AI instructing and paying humans out of its own assets to do things and report back to the AI. Now, the basis on which that contract is formed, definitely not a discussion for this podcast, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. When you put it like that, I see what you mean, that you'll have no idea what's going to be happening in 10 years.
Look at ChatGPT. Did you think 3 or 4 years ago we'd be where we are now in terms of art? In Sora, generating videos on 30-second prompts or 1-minute videos? The speed of it is incredible. So when you then bring that into this technology as well, now there's been a whole bunch of hype around this and people go, oh yeah, blockchain and AI is going to be the future. So, well, but how? And there's lots of ideas around it and lots of theories postulated. But as an entirely digital store of value, or a digital currency or a digital investment, when we get to that point where AI will be able to interact with these smart contracts and these dApps, decentralized applications, and these DAOs, that's when we're going to see some really interesting stuff. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but we are potentially not far off AI having access to its own financial firepower and being able to use that in transactions with other AI or humans.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. This is exciting times. It's like the invention of the internet wasn't too long ago, and that changed so much about what we know of the world. And now,
what's your take on this? Where do you think we're going to end up?
In terms of what?
Oh, I'll ask you the same question you asked me. How do you see this unfolding in terms of the technology, the role of humans in it, but also how we relate to technology and our own sense of wonder and faith in the universe? Is technology and AI going to replace faith?
I don't know if it's going to replace faith. I think it's a positive force for sure. I think, I love Bitcoin, and I think this Bitcoin and crypto in general will free the individual, will give the individual more responsibility, but also more freedom. And I think that especially Bitcoin saves the world from inflation. And I think...
Hasn't yet.
No, it hasn't yet. It's only 15 years old. But it will, I think, and everything will transition over into the Bitcoin standard. And I think everybody will have a piece of Bitcoin and everybody will save on Bitcoin because it cannot be inflated. And I think that the standard of living increases at that point because we're not being inflated away. The higher class is not being ripped away from the lower class because of asset ownership, because now the lower class can afford an asset, can afford property, which is Bitcoin and crypto in general. I'm not trying to conflate the two, but I just don't want to get into the specifics of it right now. I'm just trying to answer your question. So I feel happy. I feel excited. I want to talk about it on podcasts. I want to talk about it to other people. AI, I don't know how that's really going to play into everything. I think it's part of it. I think it's going to free the individual. I think it is scary, and there's reasons to be scared, but I don't know. I think there's going to be a happy marriage. I mean, I want to see AI and Bitcoin converge.
Why do you think it's going to free the individual?
Well, what? The crypto,
AI.
Bitcoin, AI? Just more powerful tool. More powerful tool. I mean, I think my life has already somewhat improved. Or not my life, but maybe my work rate, the quality of some aspects of my work, and also the scope of some of my works. I can draft a contract, a nice sounding contract, thanks to ChatGPT.
Always check that stuff with a lawyer. ChatGPT doesn't always get it right.
Of course not.
Expanding out,
but it's me. I didn't get it right. I'm the one that's using ChatGPT.
Just don't rely on it, is what I'm saying.
Certainly.
Is it possible, though, that as certain tasks get freed up, the additional work will expand to fill the freed up time?
Which additional? Where's the additional?
Everything. Work? Remember when computers first came out and they were meant to free us up because we could automate tasks, and actually it just created a whole bunch of new work. And
yes,
like spreadsheets were going to make accountants redundant.
Yes,
AI was going to make lawyers redundant. Apparently, and it's
right. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think work will continue. We have to work.
We have to work, but is it going to free up our days in terms of the hours available for leisure?
No.
Okay, so it's just going to create a new level of busy work, do you think?
Yes.
So is that freeing us?
It's as long as we're doing the work that we love and that we like, yes, I think so. Right? I think that's the important thing. It's like the humanity couldn't make films 200 years ago. It just wasn't even possible. And now there's a film industry and people make films. And I love that. That's amazing. So that was an added benefit I think that humanity had. That's one out of millions that we can make films now. So I think AI and crypto and Bitcoin bring us a new future where we'll be able to do other things that we have no idea what those are yet because we haven't gone there yet.
What would you like to do with that freed up time?
I didn't say my time was freed up though. I'm being very specific here. I know a lot of people do look at it that way, and I think you're right. I'm with you. I think you're saying there won't be a lot of free time, and I want to say I do agree with that. I don't know. For me, that's not so much a problem. I know for some people, maybe it is.
Our days will be filled in different ways.
Yeah. Don't you think in the past, humanity, like every human life was filled in some way? Did we ever really have time, more free time?
It depends what you did, I think. Pre-industrial revolution, I think a lot of people were not, if you were working in agriculture, for example, insane hours. Even now, with all the technology agriculture has, still insane hours. I don't think it was always the case. I think it depended on what you did. But now, a lot of work I see, whatever that work is just seems to consume all available hours. Even those with structured shifts, maybe.
So I'm sensing a conflict in you between what you're doing, what you're passionate about, but also a little hesitancy about.
Well, remember my background, dude. I spent a lot of time in structured monastic environments where you had your routine, got up early, did your chanting, had your breakfast, did your chores or labor, and then you had your lunch, midday meal. And then you would have a unstructured period of 8 hours or so before your evening ceremony, chanting, ritual, whatever. Okay. So that structure was most of the time, with some exceptions, very rigidly adhered to. And you did things because it was time. And then when it was your free time, you'd learn your chanting, do some meditation practice, go for long walks, do a lot of reading. I spent ages reading these Buddhist scriptures. And the chanting, you got to memorize this stuff because you got to chant for lots of different occasions. So the idea of having protected periods during the day for personal practice, and then all of the other times were structured for work or communal activity or ritual or chanting, that was quite cool. As a lawyer in this space, you don't get a structured day. So I kind of miss that, if I'm honest.
Right.
I like the idea of no matter what happens during the day or no matter how busy the labor period is, I know that after the midday meal, there is a period in which I'm not expected to do certain things. Now, obviously, inevitably, when you spend time in monasteries, there's other stuff to do, which you could do during that unstructured time. But a lot of the time that is protected. So, okay, so I don't have to go on, 3 hours of back-to-back calls during the unstructured period. So I think there is a balance to be struck.
Right.
And if you can hold that in a harmonious way, the only thing you can really control is how you relate to these things. And I'm not very good at putting that into practice sometimes. I'll get frustrated with what I perceive as a lack of control, whereas actually I can control it. So maybe I should do that more often and reclaim that. Because otherwise you can very easily succumb to working ridiculously long hours, and you probably actually won't get that much done because your productivity starts to sap. But ultimately with this stuff, because of the volume, you can always take on more, and that's great because you're helping more projects and keeping our colleagues busy as well. But you do have to hold that in balance because otherwise you can kind of push yourself too far. As you say, with AI, yes, it will free people up in some respects on some tasks, but there'll be plenty of other stuff to do. There's always something to do.
All right. But I go for a walk.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's building that time in and having more of a schedule and sticking to it.
Well, that's quite the challenge you face there, I think. I think we all face that.
You're incredibly busy at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think I'm as busy as you, though.
I mean, you've been doing lots of shoots, very long hours, and you're having to build in that around keeping the office running and managing all that stuff, the pipeline of the next shoots.
Right.
So we've all got our different ways of having to manage and structure our day.
Right.
So technology can certainly help with that, but it can also be a source of additional work.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's automatically one thing or another.
You do need to disconnect. There has to be some there are some apps that help you disconnect or whatever, like the sound of the rain or whatever it is,
Still on your phone though.
You still, I'm with you. And I think that's part of it. Like I bring this up a lot, but like there's a difference. I don't know really what it's called, but when you have your phone and you're looking, it's that short distance versus when you look up and you're looking a long distance. This is far more relaxing than when I'm looking on my phone. This is more intense, I find. And the more times you're like that, the more intense it all gets. But when you sort of just gaze up towards infinity, it kind of like frees you
Unless you're short-sighted, then you kind of look in the background and squint a bit.
I don't know what that's like yet.
Savor it.
You're short-sighted?
Yeah, short-sighted.
Which means you can see short, but you can't see...
Can't see long. I didn't bring my glasses with me either, which I probably should have done.
Why?
After a while, they kind of irritate my nose. Probably need to get them fixed.
Yeah. So what's the plan? What's the plan for the rest of the year? But
I have no idea. Okay. Look, in December, I thought, things are picking up, so cool. All right, well, we've got a team and we've got a good reputation, and maybe we can, see what the flow of stuff is like. Is it a manageable flow? Are we inundated with inquiries? And we're inundated, like a huge amount coming in, because again, Cayman has got such a good reputation.
So are the other firms getting in on this? Or is like all the firms getting in on this? Well, is it 50% of the firms getting in on this?
I don't know about the numbers because we're all so busy we don't get to meet up that often. But from what I understand, all the other lawyers in this space who work in this space are very busy as well. Are
there some firms just not coming on board, just rejecting it?
I wouldn't say rejecting it. I think it's not necessarily a priority. I mean, this stuff permeates... Sorry, that was a bad pop filter there. Let's take that one out. This stuff permeates a lot of areas of legal practice, of financial services. You can't avoid it, man. So
yeah, you can't avoid it.
You don't necessarily need like a dedicated, we're a crypto lawyer, whatever that means.
Right.
It's just understanding this stuff, whether it comes into disputes or wealth planning or insolvency.
Right.
It's increasingly touching all of these different practice areas. Yeah, so it's something to learn about. I mean, you don't have to go into the depth that we have. You certainly don't want to go into the depth that I have because it's all consuming. I mean, I'm wired that way, so I don't mind it. But it can really start to melt your brain, some of this stuff. And you don't need to go that far.
So what is it that Cayman, would you say, lacks that you would like to see more of in terms of the space?
In terms of the space, I would say we need more people who get this. We need more people.
Really?
Yeah, and we need more Caymanians to really be on top of this.
Right.
So my team, I've got 2 Caymanians. I want to get more. We've got an article clerk as Caymanian, obviously. And then we've got an Australian lawyer who's very, very good who was at one of the Cayman firms here. Then he went to the US and now he's back working with us. You probably agree with me on this. The opportunity Caymanians have given what's going on in this space. And it's not just for law stuff. It's projects moving here. They move their developers here. They move some of their operations here.
I've seen that, yeah.
They need people to help build it up, whether it's marketing or, development or all sorts of other roles. Why look abroad if there's the talent and the interest and enthusiasm here? This is a once in a generation opportunity for Caymanians.
So you need more people.
Yeah.
So are more and more people coming to Cayman?
There's always more and more people coming to Cayman, but not necessarily to do crypto. I think there's some projects moving here, and there's talk about more staff from different projects being moved here, whether for short or long periods of time, we don't know yet because it's early days. But this is a good place to be. And I've done presentations on this with the Blockchain Association, that you've got a community here, especially in the crypto space, that you haven't got anywhere else. So you come here and, you might go to the Curry Club, you might go to one of the Blockchain Association events, you might go to GT Outpost or one of the other myriad events on the island. And then you just meet such a broad variety of people. You get people who are service providers, people who are developers, people who are just super, super passionate about this stuff. You're like, wow, this is a small but really passionate group of people, and they're all coming at it from different angles. And so I like this place. We had Cayman Crypto Week in late February, and we had people come from the US, and this is their first time in Cayman, and they were enamored by what's on offer. Again, we go back to the service providers and all that good stuff, but just the amount of people here who get it and who work in it and who want to talk about it.
But yeah, you still need more.
Oh, need more lawyers, definitely. It's a growing pie, and there's not enough people to service the work. Now, we might publish this in a couple of weeks' time and the whole thing's dropped off. I think it's unlikely. But it's, as I say, it's touching across lots of different areas of law, of other areas of financial services and accounting and auditing. The volume of work coming in means that you've got to be able to give it the attention it needs. And this is complex stuff.
Tell me about it.
So, okay, well, you want to, launch a NFT project. Cool. So it's multinational structuring. I mean, this doesn't happen that often.
Right.
You're suddenly looking at, a Cayman Foundation, a BVI subsidiary, maybe an entity in Cyprus, maybe a Swiss association entity, maybe a Panama Foundation, and they all do different things, and they may or may not be related. And that's all because you want to kind of put the right things in the right places to do the right stuff.
Right.
And that depends on what each project's doing and what their timelines are and what the goals are, what the decentralization is, where the IP, intellectual property is located, where the funds flow is, where are their developers, where are their advisors. Is it even decentralized, or is it a bunch of people who are keeping this as a closed project? And if they have do they even need a foundation? What's wrong with a regular private company that they own? What's the tax consequences for them of owning and controlling a Cayman company that does crypto stuff? Does it have to be regulated? Maybe, maybe not. Depends what it does.
Sounds like they need lawyers to figure this all out.
It's never a dull day.
That's super exciting. I'm super excited to be living through this right now. Yeah. I know Satoshi was Satoshi, but I know there was a history before him too. And just to learn about that history, the cypherpunks and what they were doing and creating, and
the libertarian philosophical aspect of it is really fascinating, because it's, again, a different worldview where this technology, in theory, allows humans to organize and transact in ways they couldn't have done before. Now, are we seeing that used to its full potential? Well, it depends who you ask. Are we there now, or is it all kind of, highly closely held by very large institutions and investors? Again, it depends on who you ask. There's plenty that are decentralized. Is that the end game, or is it going to iterate further? Of course it's going to iterate further, and more benefits will come out of that, and more people will have the opportunity to do things with this technology and really unlock its potential. So we don't even know yet what's coming in the next 2 or 3 years, let alone the next year.
Yeah.
And that's why I wasn't able to answer your question.
Who can answer that question?
I have no idea.
Yeah. But it's exciting to learn about it, and it was exciting to talk to you, and because I always get to learn. Crypto isn't my strong point. I'm more in Bitcoin, but I definitely want to keep an open mind to crypto, and especially as it relates to Cayman and the service industry here. I think that's super important, and I think there is a role for crypto in some way. And thanks for coming on and talking with me. I appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure having me on. Thank you. And of course, none of that is legal or financial advice, so don't rely on it.